interviewing Mr. Al Peak. Can you spell your name?
P-E-A-K.
Before we get to the interview questions, I have a few preliminary questions for you. Can you tell me what dates you worked for RCA and what was your job title?
Oh, as I mentioned, it was June of 1954 I started, ended up at January 1987. Had many titles. When I ended, I was contract manager for data communications, national contract manager for data communications, and budget performance, which means that a lot of our regional management, regional managers' offices, with their budgets, I would analyze their budgets and give critical reviews of their budget to see where they could cut corners or make improvements so that the budget met the budget that they set forth in the earlier months. They have a budget for so many dollars, so much profit. We want to make sure that they make that profit during that period of time. And before that, I was National Service Manager for Data Communications for 4 years. So there's a lot of titles I had during my work with RCA. For many years, I was Manager of Contract Administration, signed all the contracts that we had in the service company, and that was an interesting aspect. A lot of our contracts were theater contracts throughout the country. We had service contracts in all the theaters throughout the country, and all the drive-ins at one time. And we had contracts on mobile communications equipment. We had contracts on broadcast equipment, contracts on radio marine equipment, closed circuit equipment, and a lot of the products that RCA made downtown in Camden, we maintained after they were out in the field, and that was part of our job, really. That's why we were called originally technical product, because it was different than consumer products. Consumer products was the televisions that you had in your home. They were the consumer product section. When you went into technical products, they were the more sophisticated pieces of equipment that required a different type of expertise. And the other part of the service company was government service, where they would take over actually the Army bases, and they would perform the custodial and security services for the government that inhabited that area. But they were some of the things that we did, really.
Did you get paid extra because you had so many jobs?
No.
No?
Actually, with RCA, you just kept increasing your pay as you increase your managerial skill. I mean, if you're in charge of so many people, that's what they expect. And then after so many months in the job, and after getting merit reviews, you get your pay based on the effectiveness of what you did.
How did you get your job at RCA?
How to get my job?
Yeah.
I had been working for Underwood Corporation in South Philadelphia, in Philadelphia, selling typewriters. And one day, the manager of the Camden TV branch moved in next to where I lived. And at night, we would sit in the backyard and have a beer and talk about different things, and about what I did and what he did. And he said, why don't you come down to RCA? He said, we have an opening for a salesman in our contract. See whether you'd be interested in working part-time. So I went down and I got the job, and that's how I started. After about 6 months, working from 6 to 9 at night, after my Underwood job, they offered me a job as a stockman for work on a full-time basis for RCA, which was the bottom of the pile. And I started with RCA right there. And it worked out quite well.
What kind of wages and benefits did you earn at RCA?
Very good. When I ended up, I was making $70,000 a year. That was back in 1987. And I was what they call a class 52 manager, senior manager. And I thought that was pretty good for starting rather late in life at RCA, really. I was 32 years old when I started. After working 9 years in the printing business, a year as Underwood typewriters, and then coming into RCA. And a lot of the people with whom I worked at RCA as a stockman were the RCA technicians that went into your home to fix your televisions. And most of those fellows were in their early 20s, really, just coming out of World War II. And it was interesting, really. You got an opportunity to work with a different type of personnel all along the way, really. After working with the younger fellows in the TV branches, I went into technical products. And a lot of those servicemen throughout the country were much older. They had been working for more years in theaters, and I got the opportunity to work with an older group of men, really, that was doing the maintenance for technical products.
What were your relationships with your coworkers like?
Excellent. Always enjoyed my people, and they actually I had a good staff all the time, and there are certain co-workers that you depend upon more than others, but I was always able to work favorably with my co-workers. Really, you need a good staff to be able to get along.
You still keep in contact with them?
Yeah, the ones that are still living. Yeah. In fact, I went to my cardiologist last week, and in the office was one of my previous employees. She worked for me 30 years ago, and she left me to have her first baby. And right now, what she does, she measures the Coumadin and the blood counts, really, for people that are on Coumadin, blood thinners. She came out and she amazing.
Were there a variety of ethnic groups when you worked at RCA?
Yes, all ethnic groups, really. I actually didn't make any difference to us, really. We got along fine with everybody, and everybody had a mission. They knew what they had to do, and with their own personalities and everything else. It was great, really.
Did you have family that worked with you at RCA?
My family? No, I was the only one in my family ever worked for RCA in service company. My sister worked as a data card processor in Camden for 25 years, and she retired from RCA and before she passed on. Yeah.
What were your conditions like working? Excellent.
Yeah, actually, with RCA, they became better as you moved along in management. I worked. Most of my management was at the RCA Service Company in Cherry Hill, right across from Cherry Hill Mall, where Target.
Yeah.
And actually, we had our office there. There was about 2,000 people worked there, and I worked there most of the time, really. But when I was office manager of the South Philadelphia TV branch, that was a little tight. That was a little tough to get to, and the conditions weren't as good as they were when I moved in the home office. Really, you had to make do with what you had, and I was right downtown in South Philadelphia. Parking wasn't that great, and the conditions weren't that great because as an office manager, you had to go to the bank twice a day with money, and South Philadelphia wasn't a good place to go to the bank every day with money. So you had to keep your eyes alert all the time to make sure that there wasn't anybody around to take your money.
What was one of your most memorable experiences working at RCA?
Well, actually, I had hired an African American fellow from Michigan Bell to work for me at the Hertz Reservation Center in Oklahoma City. And I moved him down from Detroit to Oklahoma City. And he had just gotten a divorce from his wife, and he had 2 kids, and 2 kids were with him. And at the time, I was National Service Manager for major accounts. And my accounts were UPI, Reuters, Avis, Hertz, American Airlines, and the U.S. Department of Justice. We had a multitude of major accounts. And the Hertz Reservation Center was in Oklahoma City. And anytime you call Hertz for a reservation, it goes into Oklahoma City. And they have about 100 women there taking calls from all over the world. And I hired this gentleman from Detroit, brought him down, and April 1st of 1981, I got a call from the Vice President of Communications at Hertz. He said, Al, he said, this is not an April Fool's joke, but I want to tell you that your man out here is down in the psychiatric ward down at the hospital. He ran berserk through our reservation center. I said, oh, gosh. I said, what happened? Well, he went up to one of the black women in the reservation center who was pregnant, and stood in front of her and said, your child is going to be a child of Satan. And she became hysterical. All the women became hysterical. And we had to call the police and take him out and take him down to the hospital. And so I had to bring another fellow up from Tulsa, another one of my account managers up from Tulsa, American Airlines. I said, come up to Hertz, keep the crowd from getting hysterical, and bring everything back to normal. And after about 3 months, the fellow that went berserk was ready to come back to work. And he had a brain chemical change. I mean, it was something that happens in your brain, that your chemicals in your brain change, and you need help. So after about 3 months, he wanted to come back to work. And I had to come out and I had to talk to the vice president again. I said, and I knew the vice president from New York. So I said, Charlie, you know, I'd like to bring Johnny Merritt back to work. And he said, no way, you're not going to get him back in this office. And I said, look, you've been working for Hertz for over 25 years. I got over 25 years with RCA. I said, I'd hate if either of us had gotten sick and had a chemical brain change and we wanted to come back to work with proper medication, that somebody would say, you can't come back to work. And he said, oh. He gave me the hearts and flowers. He says, and I said, you have a nurse. I said, your nurse can check his blood anytime. If he doesn't take his medication, you call me and he's out. So they brought him back, and it was good. And I went out to see him after I brought him back, and I'm sitting at a restaurant afterwards, and I'm talking about this event, and I said, Johnny, why would you go up to this woman and tell her that her child would be a child of Satan? He said, Al, it wasn't me, it was them. And I wondered whether I did the right thing in bringing him back when he's telling me he's still got people inside telling him what to do. But that was one of the worst things that I went through, really.